Lisa Copeland, and I want to invite you to my show, The Big Sell. Are you ready to stop being a small player in a big world? Are you ready to decommoditize your business? Are you ready to stand aside from the competition? Join me every week on The Big Sell. Hi, everybody. It's Lisa Copeland, and welcome to another episode of the Art of the Big Sell podcast, where I only bring to you big sellers, people who have big ideas and build big movements in life. And today's no different. I want to introduce you to my guest, Josh Evans. Josh, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
Well, you are so high energy. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I wake up this way. And the funny thing is many times most people don't, including my wife. And so I haven't even started making coffee yet. And she's like, you need to slow down until I get at least a cup or two in me. So that's kind of how I approach every single day, every sort of situation. But yeah, this is me naturally. I have a lot of energy, if only because I'm very excited about what I do. Otherwise, I don't do it.
Right.
And that's essentially, yes. And that's essentially where I started my entire career, is just being passionate about the things that I sold, leading up to starting my own business, which it's impossible to not be passionate about your own business. Otherwise, you won't be in business.
Oh, absolutely. So it's almost like you've got a supernatural passion. Have you been that way your whole life?
I have. And I don't know if it's because of naivete or just because I want to put that much energy towards something, but I find it hard to slow down, especially if I find myself leading to or being led towards something. I want to sprint full out, because why would I half-heartedly approach something? I think there's a lot of people out there that keep their cards close to their vest nowadays, or they don't necessarily want to put themselves out there for fear of being rejected or fear of failure or fear of being hurt, whether it's emotionally or economically.
Right.
And those are the sorts of things that hold people back. Whether you're selling, $400 million worth of subsea pipeline, or you're selling somebody your book, like a single book for $14.95 or whatever it might be, you have to be confident in what you're doing, and you have to run towards it. Otherwise, people are going to look at you as if you're hiding something, I think.
All right. Well, tell us about you. Tell us about your career and how you started in sales. And I want to know more about you.
I'm going to start at the very beginning. When I was, we're going to go way back. We're going back to when I was just barely a teenager. I used to sell anything I could get my hands on up and down my parents' street. I made homemade dish soap that I would sell to my neighbors. We made bug repellent that didn't really work. And, I can look back now and actually admit that. But at the time, I was like, no, it's phenomenal. And then I remember I was pretty young. I think I was around 12 or 13. I got in trouble because I was trying to sell timeshares in my parents' backyard. And I didn't know what timeshares were at the time. All I knew was like, hey, you know what we can do? If we set up some tents in my parents' backyard, we can go out and get money and let people use the tents for a few days out of every year. And I had never even heard of the concept.
Where did you come up with that idea?
I was very entrepreneurial from a young age, and I would sell this stuff up and down. I'd get donations of materials. I'd get donations of money. And my parents stopped me one day, and they pulled me aside. You cannot sell timeshares to our yard. But I've always been that kind of a person where I see opportunity and I sprint towards it. And there's very little slowing me down. And it really translated into me wanting to study communications, because my goal is to be able to communicate effectively with anybody I speak to. I come off very enthusiastic and almost overbearing in a lot of the way in which I communicate. So I always wanted to know how to communicate more effectively. And so I studied communications through school. And then when I got out, I absolutely went into sales, because that's my natural bent, is helping provide solutions to people. And my first job out of college was working in Houston, Texas in August, where it's about 98 degrees plus and 100% humidity and a suit
it's
tie.
hotter, my friend, than 98 degrees in August. I'd say like 198, but maybe like 109.
It can get into it's in the low hundreds for sure. I'm just trying to be nice to my own city, because it's still my home city.
Right.
But yeah, so it'll be 102 and it's still ridiculously humid, and I'm wearing a suit and tie outside going door to door to businesses trying to sell credit card processing services.
Oh, and, that's a tough sell, because everybody's already got it.
They do. It's so, I got kicked out of so many places. Like there's places like now, like I'll hesitate to go in now as a consumer to certain restaurants and stuff, because I remember them like throwing chairs at me. And no, the thing is it taught me tenacity, being able to walk into a place and not fear rejection, but to kind of run towards it. And that's where I'm at now. And I absolutely love that sort of thing. And that dovetailed into selling technology for about 12 years in the oil and gas space. And I absolutely love doing that, if only because I was still providing a solution, but at a much higher price point, which is nice because the commissions are bigger.
I was about to say higher price point, higher commission. We know how that works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the neat things from that is I got into an argument one time with one of my coworkers. And so I carry around technical assets because I'm not a smart guy. I'm just a passionate guy. And so I can get in there and I can have the conversations, but I want somebody that knows the real details if we're going to start getting into the nitty gritty. And so we had a conversation, a meeting with one of my clients one time. Actually, they weren't a client yet, but we started having these conversations. And the original conversation started out talking about, okay, it's about $150,000 software deal that we were talking about, which is pretty good, right? That would have been nice for my quarter. And then I just start asking more questions and I start wanting to understand more about his business. And as we start diving in, I find out they have 13 offices with the exact same problem. And so I take this $150,000 problem or solution and turn it into about $1.5 million.
Yeah,
and of course,
I was trying to do the math in my head.
Well, I had to give them a discount if they're going to buy 13 or I'll throw in the last couple. But just having the conversation and having the tenacity and the gumption to go after it, right? That confidence, people, they respect that. And so we walk out of there and I'm elated because I'm the sales guy and no, they haven't signed the check yet. We haven't delivered anything yet, but I'm already spending it in my head, right? I'm like, I'm going to get the new sailboat.
Which is all good salespeople do. You spend your money, baby, before you even have it in the bank account.
It was gone already in my head.
That's what motivates us.
I'm cash operated, but with a good cause, right? And as I'm walking out of there, the guy that's with me, my technical resource, he's just rubbing his eyes and like pulling his hair. He's like, how on earth can you tell him we can do that? I was like, well, we can, right? He's like, it's going to take so much work. He's like, this is terrible. It's like, how is this terrible? He's like, Josh,
made a big sale and it was terrible?
I know. I was like, how on earth are you this despondent about the whole situation? He's like, well, it's going to be a lot of work. I was like, that's what they pay us for. What is wrong with you?
That's why, Josh, he's a technical guy.
Absolutely.
And a sales guy.
That's why we collect the big checks.
That's right.
And they sit in their dark cubicle.
Right. And the whole time he's just thinking, oh my God, I just had to do 13 times the work for the same hourly pay. And this guy's going to go out and buy a sailboat.
Absolutely. And I did. But all that to the side to say that night I got home and I was just frustrated. How can somebody be so dispassionate in something that they're literally collecting money to go do that? Yeah, go do it. If you don't like it, then find something more fulfilling. Absolutely, you should do that. But don't complain about doing the work that you're paid to do. And so I got home that night and I had a couple of scotches by myself and I started writing a book. And I ended up writing my first book, which is on why you should be passionate and enthusiastic about your work. And when that became a bestseller, I quit my 9-to-5 job and said, this is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to help people reclaim their passion, because it's not day one that people get upset, right? Day one, everybody's excited. It's day 500 where they're like, I just want to burn this place to the ground.
Right.
And so that's what I do now is I help organizations and sales team go through this process to remember why they should be passionate, how they can instill that passion in every single customer they interact with. And it's phenomenal. This is now the most fulfilling work I've ever done.
Okay, so Josh, throw some clues out to us. Some of our listeners and our viewers, they've been in the same job for 10 years, it's the same thing day in, day out. They hate their boss. They're living in a cubicle. They're on the phone all day long trying to sell some commodity. How do they restore their passion?
Well, and it doesn't, at that point, it doesn't necessarily just come from money, right? You actually have to care, because if you're just doing a set amount of work for a certain amount of money, there's nothing that's going to keep you from leaving that job to do the same amount of work for a little bit more money, right? And so if you want to be a mercenary, that's one thing, but you're never going to enjoy your job. What you need to remember is that anytime you're selling something, you're literally serving somebody else. I think having that adds a lot more depth to what you're doing. If I remember that I'm providing some sort of meaning to the clients that I'm working with, I care a lot more about making that sale and about explaining it better. I'm not just trying to get their check. I'm not just trying to get their credit card. Well, that's noble in itself. If I can